Right, now it's time for the second part of our look at the South African series. So sit up straight, unfurl the Union Jack, hum a few bars of Land of Hope and Glory, and enjoy some of the best cricket that England have played for quite some time.
England moved on to Trent Bridge for the fourth Test match, on a high, having saved the game at Old Trafford. They won the toss and they inserted South Africa. But yet again, England struggled to break through the middle and lower order. Another captain's innings by Hansie Cronje, supported by Pollock's 50, and the number 9 on his debut, Steve Elworthy, 48. So they saw South Africa to a respectable total of 374. Another Test debutant, Lancastrian Andrew Flintoff, would have been surprised to have bowled 17 overs, but delighted to take his first wicket in Test cricket, dismissing Jack Callis. It was the return to his best form of Angus Fraser, though, which ultimately was to turn the match and indeed the series. Fraser did the hard work through the middle order to end up with 5 for 60, after Darren Gough, with 4 for 116, had knocked over the top two and the last two in good strike bowler fashion. The only disappointment for England in the field was the bowling of Ian Salisbury, who wasn't allowed to settle by Cronje and Rhodes. Cronje was particularly savage on the England leg spinner.
Cronje had previously had a disappointing record against England, so for him to play so well against us again was disappointing for us.
370 was it they got? Was too many. You know, ideally that should have been possibly 280, 300 considering how the wicket played. So we again had to bat well to stay in the game.
England's batting was sound on a very, very good pitch, but although Butcher, Atherton and the maturing Ramprakash all made half centuries, it was that man Donald again, who gradually worked his way through the England batting, and another 5-wicket haul was on its way. Graham Hick's failure on his return, again at the hands of the strike bowler, was a real disappointment. He was keen to impose himself on the game and will consider himself a little bit unlucky to have dragged the ball back onto his stumps. Andrew Flintoff had also tried 1 or 2 audacious strokes against Alan Donald and had threatened a Botham-like assault on the bowling, but it was all too brief. So England had to concede a 38-run deficit on first innings.
Although we would have looked for a lead, it meant that we got 330. We were pretty much on level terms with them for the first half of the game, so the pitch was reduced to 1 innings match. It wasn't going to deteriorate. It's going to be a pretty good pitch to bat last on. So I wasn't too worried about the fact that we had a bit of a collapse. I thought the game was progressing. It was a game we had to win, and that to win it we had to bowl them out for a reasonable total second time round, which we duly did.
England got amongst the wickets early, with Gough, Fraser and Cork each taking 1, as South Africa slumped to 21 for 3, and for the first time on the tour the tourists were under real pressure.
Well, it was an un-South African-like performance. Normally they're pretty disciplined. They normally try, and the way they play cricket is to try and not give you a sniff in the game and then go for the win. They try and close the game down. So that's why I remember the odds in the middle of the game were very much against us at the bookies, but I felt it was the kind of Test match we might beat them in, because somehow the game was progressing too quickly for their liking. They don't like Test matches where it hangs in the balance. They like to be well in control of the game, try and snuff you out the game. So I was pretty confident that it was a game we'd do well in.
There are few better bowlers in the world at keeping the pressure on than Gus Fraser, and he forced error after error on his way to 5 for 62 off 28.3 overs. He was well supported by Cork, who ended up with 4 for 60, and South Africa collapsed to 208 all out.
Angus bowled tremendously well throughout the whole series, but particularly pleased for Corky. He'd be the first to hold his hand up and say first innings at Trent Bridge he bowled indifferently. He showed a lot of character, a lot of guts in the way he came back, and thoroughly deserved the wicket haul he got.
But the South Africans were angry about several decisions made by umpire Mervyn Kitchen. Firstly, the decision to give out Jack Callis, but more obviously the catch down the leg side by Stewart to dismiss Jonty Rhodes. Subsequent replays show clearly that the ball had come off the buckle of the pad. So 247 to win, and it was anyone's game. Ladbrokes had made England marginal favourites to level this series at 1-1. So much depended on Michael Atherton, who was about to play one of his finest, yet most controversial match-winning innings of his career.
Yeah, there were things in our favour. I mean, the pitch which started green, a little bit like at Christchurch against New Zealand a couple of years before, meant that it wasn't really deteriorating for the quicker bowlers. There was a bit of spin there, but we weren't too worried about their spin. Donald and Pollock were the main threat, and it was a pretty good surface to play them on.
That's a beautiful strike. County Cornhill is looking for the swing. There's none there at the moment.
With England going along nicely, Atherton appeared to glove a short pitch delivery from Alan Donald to the keeper Mark Boucher. Atherton stood firm, and New Zealand umpire Steve Dunn gave him not out. This was the signal for Alan Donald, the gentle giant of a man, to totally lose his cool, and he decided to bomb Atherton from round the wicket.
And I love that pure Test cricket personally. That's a one-on-one. Yeah, we've got a game, but I want to watch this as well. And he's the one chap that with a new ball and a big fella and a good pitch would relish that challenge.
Adams has now gone out deep. Well, between them they could write a book, these two, by the time they finished.
During this mayhem, in indifferent light, Hussain, who played very well for 58, was dropped by Boucher.
Another chance. Oh, he's dropped it. Well, that is going to make Alan Donald absolutely livid. Mark Boucher has hung on to all those throughout the series.
How remarkable it was to see a distraught Donald running 70 yards from fine leg to console the forlorn wicketkeeper. This session was Test cricket at its very best, despite the view of many former players that it just wasn't cricket. The big question arising out of the Atherton-Alan Donald battle was whether it was intimidation or not, and a lot of former players wrote in various newspapers that they felt that it was, and Alan Donald should have been warned and banned and taken off for the innings. I don't personally think so. I thought it was a magnificent session of Test cricket, and that's what it's all about. It's tough, and the short pitch bowling wasn't, to me, intimidatory of a player of Michael Atherton's quality. Michael Atherton moved on to 98 not out, with Alex Stewart's cameo of 45 not out, bringing up the victory that England have waited so long for. Tony Lewis gave Fraser the man of the match for his 10 wickets, which I was very pleased with because it was, of course, a very good batting pitch. Where better then than Headingley to stage a finale to a series which stood level at 1-1.